a villain. I think villains are smarter than heroes because they don't mind stabbing somebody in the back to get where they want to get. It's a fact. It's a proven fact. Google it.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Tribe of Nerds. Devin and I are back. We're here for our new What Makes series for Survivor. Super excited to get this going, and it's an idea that Devin pitched to me, and I thought this was an amazing idea. So Devin, you want to hit it off with why you came up with this idea?
Okay, so this idea started with actually a decompression from a game, an all-star game that I played with Jake, where I felt that I was the villain in the eyes of everybody in the game except for like myself and like two other people. And I did not think it was deserved because I was like, I really haven't lied to people. I haven't done too much other than one event, but we'll leave that where it's at. But I was like, how am I the villain? And it made me start thinking like, what makes a villain? Which started the whole idea. And then I was like, we could kind of maybe turn this into something because there's also other things we can talk about in this series. But we're going to start with what makes a villain. Because to me, I hold a personal, what would you call it, connection with the villain, despite not feeling like you're the villain.
Right. And it's so interesting, like that perception. We're going to talk a lot about the perception of a villain within Survivor history. And yeah, I just thought this was a wonderful idea. We can speak to personal experiences in the game as well, I'm sure, with that. So the first question, the first discussion point. So what is the importance of a villain in the narrative of the game, Devin? What do you think is the importance of a villain is on Survivor?
I mean, I think it comes down to storytelling. Like Survivor, as we know, is a reality game show, and it plays out for the players each individual person having their own narrative and arc that they are seeing for themselves playing out, but you can't show all that. So the show has to edit it down. And a way that you edit it down and actually tell a story is you need protagonists. And protagonists are only interesting if they have an antagonist. So for me, I think the importance comes down to storytelling. You have to have someone who is the opposition to your main characters, depending on the season. So I think that the importance does boil down to just which person in this narrative that we have to construct was the most opposition to our protagonist, or if they can't find that, they have to find somebody who is a little bit, rough around the edges and harder to, or I shouldn't say harder, easier to edit in this way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like the examples, Pearl Islands, you have Rupert and Johnny Fairplay. Like that's a perfect example of like you have your hero, everybody loves Rupert watching the show, and then Johnny Fairplay is that villain that's opposing Rupert. And then Heroes versus Villains, you have the heroes and the villains theme, but you also have like Russell Hantz. Like Russell Hantz is this villain opposing the heroes. He's the reason that the heroes are falling apart, and Parvati as well. So like, I mean that it's cool to look at Survivor history, and I'm excited to kind of take this deep dive with you, Devin, into what makes a good villain. So
it's gonna be fun, and it's gonna because I've shared a lot of thoughts already with you. You've got my document, but like I went deep, y'all. When I
you did.
Why I was made the.
This is going to be good. So, Devin, you came up with 3 types of villains. So we have strategic, we have personal, and we have hybrid. So kind of go over like what makes those 3 types of villains, and then we can get into them.
Okay, so let's just start with the first one, which is what I am like deeming a strategic villain. Because at the end of the day, they're going to be more complicated than what we're narrowing them down to. But most villains can be separated into one of these 3 things. So the strategic villain is going to be the person that we get to see their gameplay. Sometimes they are the villain to a cast of people who are playing the hero role, and it's almost like a reversed story where we're watching a villain's arc of how they won or got to the end, wherever they finished. But a strategic villain, you're going to see most of their antagonistic moments that the viewers are going to view are going to be strategic related. Blindsiding people, using idols and advantages correctly, making a big move. Sometimes like putting other players, like pinning players against each other is another thing you might see from a strategic villain. These people are probably portrayed positively as far as who they are, the character that they are in the game, but what they're doing strategically is portrayed as a mean,
Right.
like meaner, or you know what I mean. So this is the type of villain for me that like this is what crafted Survivor at the end of the day. This is the villain archetype that truly crafted to what we watch nowadays, because most of these people who you would consider strategic villains are big names now.
Yes.
You know, got players like Boston Rob, Tony, Richard, Parvati, Sandra to an extent. I think Sandra's a little weird because I actually don't think that she ever played the villain role on a season, but she was thrown as a villain on Heroes. But they're strategic players that we're seeing into their psyche of what they're thinking and why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah. I think I think those are really good examples. I mean, starting from the beginning, I mean, Richard Hatch is the person who invented Survivor strategy, basically. Like, he was thinking 5 steps ahead where most of the other people didn't even know this was a game.
So that's kind of the strategic villains. We'll go more in depth on things when we get down to like the archetypes, because archetypes are different type of villain they are.
Yeah.
It's going to be a personal villain. Now, these villains, we're not going to be seeing a lot of their strategic gameplay. Instead, we are going to see them in negative personality traits. I don't want to say like, you know, I relate, but it's going to be when they have flaws, those are what are shown to the audience the most. So they're going to come across petty, hateful, prone to outbursts, but like maybe even like a little bit like snarky. Like we can get like 2 examples of these types of villains. I think that like for me, Corinne is like, Corinne really doesn't do anything strategically villainous. Like, she's very loyal to her group. She's very pretty much like, I want to work with these people and these are the people I'm going to work with type of player. But she's always portrayed as a villain because she kind of like embodies the snarky, petty, mean-spirited type of personality traits that are associated with somebody who might be a villain. Randy from the same season. I'm trying to look down.
Courtney Yates.
Courtney. Jerry Manthe. I actually think this type of villain, because if you look at her game in Australian Outback, which is her big villain game, she's actually to her group. They just don't like anything. It's not necessarily because she's doing anything bad. So this archetype is, I think, probably in ways the most fun, because these are the villains that you can truly learn to love to hate. Because I mean, most of the people have very, what would you call it, like polarized views. They either love this player or they can't stand them. But also, this is probably the group of people who get the most unfair backlash from the audience.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen that with Jerry getting booed off stage in All-Star. Seen like some of the death threats and stuff that people send these people because they were mean. Like, there's $1 million on the line. Okay, listen, people can be mean for literally a congratulation post, I can tell you personally. This is going to be the villains that are villains based on truly their actions and personality in the game that are usually frowned upon by the
It's very fascinating. I mean, I would consider, well, I guess we'll get to hybrid in a second, because I think Russell Hantz is probably a hybrid, but like Russell is very, very personal. That's why he has not won Survivor, but I'm sure we'll get to that. Other people you have listed under personal, like Scott Pollard and Kyle Jason, like these two were like a duo that was extremely personal, and you know, things didn't go their way and they decided to hurt the tribe. So
this is where we get pariahs, like so this is like Coach Philip, Maria, these that were villains to the actual cast. Like the cast had or members of the cast had harbored feelings of negative. I'm trying to look. I know that this is always a hard conversation for people, but like this is also Jeff Varner. Or Jeff Varner, we all know, like during Game Changers, like what happened there. That is an example of the type of scene we might get whenever somebody is a personal villain. They're a villain because of something they did.
Right. Yeah, Varner's a perfect example. For sure, because like he took the game to outside the game and whole nother level. So
that most comfortable going to. I mean, like at the end of the day, I've always said this in Survivor, it's all fair in love and war, and wherever you're willing to take it is where you're willing to take it. But you have that not everybody's willing to take it there, and there might be repercussions to your actions when you take certain things certain places. But that's beside the point. Then we get into the hybrid villains. These are villains that are going to toe the line between both a strategic and personal. You mentioned Russell. Russell's a perfect example of this. Yes. I think Rosa is a good example of this.
Yeah.
Play is a good example. Like, they're strategic players. They are playing the game, and we are getting to see what they're doing and why they're. But there's going to be also be moments, or sometimes in Russell's case, the entire time he's on screen, openly insulting the rest of his cast and, ruining any chance he has of winning the game. But that's for less. There are people who are not like him, though. I think that, like, I did have a few people, Angelina, Shan, Emily, and Rizzo, I think all fall into this, where we see villainous moments. Most recently on 50 with Rizzo. Rizzo then got the almost like what I thought was going to be a pariah edit, where he was kind of, seen as hard to work with, and like they didn't really care for his personality and stuff. But then obviously he came out of it. But I would consider hybrid villain because we got to see his strategic stuff, but we also got to see when other people he was rubbing them the wrong way.
Riz God's interesting in that sense, because I do also think he's someone that you love him or hate him. Like, I'm a big Riz God fan, but obviously there's people in our community, Devin, that aren't big Riz God fans. So he's polarizing.
I enjoy Rizzo. I think he brings a lot of he's a player that brings a lot of like what a super fan can be in the game, because I think that he is one of the few super fans, like probably one of those people like us who's like knows everything, knows all the players. He as far as the history of the show and how it was like how the strategy was created and everything. And we see a lot of times those players like overplay their hand, go home early, make themselves way too threatening. And Rizzo really does a really good job of and we get shown it. That's why he's in the hybrid, because we get shown his strategic actions. But we also do see, like I said, I think it was Colby in that early game, anti-Rizzo. Chaos is another one where he strategically, if you're paying attention in the episode where she's notoriously seen as never going to win the game, we know why she flipped, because she seems Sarah as too wishy-washy, and she flips because of it. But then we also see her flip
Trish.
Yeah, flip Trish up. Get arguments with Tony. I think Tony also belongs in this tier, because we see crazy, gameplay, but we also see, people being like, well, crazy Tony, like Tony's a nut. And then we also see him like scream at people saying he's speaking llama and stuff like that, which is traditionally negative. I think that it was only perceived positive because it was cast, but like he would have been the biggest bully in Survivor history or something or whatever. But like at the end of the day, like this group of villains kind of embody both of the first two.
Yeah, it's really fascinating with like people like Tony and Cass, who are both in this category, and they both antagonize each other. And I think that's what makes that dynamic pretty fun. And I think it's funny you mentioned that, because like I do think like Tony doing like the llama stuff, it probably doesn't fly if it's someone other than Cass, but because it's Cass, everybody's just like, okay, this is really funny.
So the true difference for me, a differentiator between the three, is one of them is pretty much never going to win the game.
Yeah.
A personal villain is probably never winning. If you're seeing somebody who is strictly just a personal villain, that probably is a big hint edit-wise that they are not winning. But the other two, we do have winners in those. Like Richard in the first one, we also, and the truth is Richard Hatch you could almost put in the third one, but I would say taking off his Borneo game, he's the first one. All Stars is kind of where you kind of get like the icky stuff, and But anyway, in his original season, where he's just shown as this strategic person who knows what he's doing around a bunch of people who are out of their depth.
It's the fascinating part. So like, you mentioned Richard Hatch, one for strategic. Hybrid, I mean, I could see Savannah as a hybrid, for example. She was personal. People got very put off by Savannah, and she's also strategic, and she won the game because of it. So yeah, I think that's really fascinating. The 49 and season 1 winner.
I would almost dare to say, edit-wise, this is for people who care about the edit. Being a villain and you are like, oh, this seems like a front runner. If they're getting a strategic edit, there's a high chance they're winning. If it seems like they're getting a personal edit, that's your cue for they're not winning. But if you are getting a hybrid, that's where you have to be very careful, because the reason you might be getting a hybrid is because they're winning and they want you to understand how they won, but they still need the villain in the storyline in order to keep it interesting. So I think that's why hybrid villains are so fun, because you never know how they're actually going to turn out, while the other two are like, they're losing, they're probably winning if they're the main character and the villain.
Right. Well, and the hybrid thing with like Russell, for instance, I mean, there's people that still argue he should have won Survivor Samoa, like, because they respect the strategic part of his game. They just don't take into account the personal part of it, I don't think.
But enough on, like, I think that we, instead of just sticking with this, I do want to move into like
Archetypes.
Villains have archetypes too. Like, they're not just going to fall into one of these categories. That's kind of, to me, baseline. Like, where are they baseline? This is where we get more like pinpointing where they are as a villain, is what these are. And the first one, I think we can just talk about it first, and it's the mastermind.
Yes.
This is in the game. Usually these are people who shape or reform the game. And we'll get into the second one pretty quickly, because the edit is everything in Survivor. It's the way that the audience is going to perceive things. And because of the way that the edit chooses to edit men versus women, usually men are going to get a mastermind edit, while a woman is going to get a femme fatale edit. Even though they kind of are one and the same, they changed the way the game was played. But that's a rant for a different time on the way that they treat it. But like the masterminds, these are going to be players like Hatch, Boston Rob, Todd, Russell, Tyson, Tony, these bigger names who truly kind of shaped not just their season, but they probably left lasting impressions moving forward. I think Jeremy, if he was a villain, would have been in this category too, with the meat shield strategy that he like. So we're looking not just what they did for their season, but also like the legacy that they left in the strategic, what do you call it, like strategic overview of the whole game.
Yes, yeah. So for me, like, I think Richard Hatch is obviously the first, but I think like the biggest one that comes to mind with this is Boston Rob. Because I mean, especially in All Stars, because Marquesas, he's out right before the jury. He obviously does the thing getting rid of Hunter early. Like, that's a huge game-changing move that does define the game. But then we get All Stars, and Boston Rob really further defines the game. He cements himself as one of the biggest players in Survivor history, one of the biggest villains, and he masterminded that whole game. So it's really fascinating. So
is the person who truly defined how strong a duo can be. Like, we've seen duos up to this point, but we had never seen a duo truly from day 1 to day 39 dominate, with him being the strategic figurehead and Amber being more of the like calm for him. Like, most of the game is calming down and reeling in Boston Rob, and Boston Rob's the one out biting the hands, essentially. So I think that the next big one that we see for me is Todd, where we see how a villain can, like, we've seen Hatch win, but besides Hatch up until Todd, the only other like major villain who got a win was
Brian Heideck. We can start around Brian Heideck.
We will acknowledge him this one time, but like, okay. Anyway, but Todd is who redefined that you can be a villain and win, because Todd has maybe the best, if not definitely one of the best, if not the best, final tribal council performances of all time, where he kind of owns his debauchery.
Yes. Yeah. It's one of the greatest final tribal performances. I think it's the greatest final tribal performance in Survivor history, because we, like you said, we have never really seen anybody straight up own their game. Because like back in All Stars, Boston Rob does not own his game. All he does is like try to apologize to the jury that he sees they're pissed off at him, and it comes off as fake. And then Todd just completely owns it. Like, hey, I backstabbed all of you. I basically said, screw all of you, and I should win because of it. So, and he did. So huge props to Todd. I think he legitimately deserves the credit for showing how it can be done, how you can win a game at Final Tribal.
Yeah. And before we move on from Todd, I think that this is also just like one of the first times in the history of Survivor where at the Final Tribal Council, we see one of the main villains of the season being Todd, who is a mastermind strategic villain, is where I would place Todd.
Yeah.
And see him kind of show his prowess when he, like, the best moment for me is when James says, he shut up John Robert. Like, we see a pariah villain, because John Robert is also a villain in this season, as is Courtney, of the way the villain edit got shaken up in China. But we got to see that type of move where the jury, it earns jury respect by being able to kind of prove right on the spot what you're able to do, which was, you have this guy who's kind of arrogant, kind of full of himself, and then you get him to not have a remark because you flipped his switch to where he just respect you. And now you not just earn his respect, but multiple jurors' respects and win the game. I think the next big one is Russell.
Yeah, we need to talk about Russell, because Russell really defined Survivor. Love him or hate him, like, Russell really changed how Survivor would be played. From episode 1 of Samoa, where he's lying about Hurricane Katrina and burning people's socks. Like, nobody had ever gone and done that, where they'd sabotage their tribe just in the name of, I'm gonna make them all feel weak and like my puppets. And nobody had ever really thought that way before until Russell. And it's insane to think about, like, that Russell in 2 tries of, like, stepping immediately into being that villain role, he ends up being one of the few to make it back to final tribal councils, with Amanda being the first, of course, but he is the second person to do that. So, which is crazy.
I think that this is also, like, the big thing that Russell to me did is, despite his actions, and we can get into why he lost, but at a later date, but we see after Russell that players are a little bit more willing and a little bit more forgiving towards this type of gameplay. Like, because we see it happen in back-to-back seasons in Blood versus Water and Cagayan, where and Tony both are probably the villains of the season, but unlike Russell, who burnt his jury chances because of their more charismatic personalities, and the fact that I think that people were a little more forgiving now that they've seen people, I don't want to say go to the levels that Russell would do, but Russell raised the caliber of what was acceptable in order to win. So I think that, like, we see, like, Tony in particular, it feels almost the whole time you're watching Cagayan that he's going to be Tony, or he's going to get to lose because everybody, but then we see the flip where the jury respects him more for playing the game, opposed to somebody like Wu, who they feel like actively sabotaged his own game.
Right. Yeah. That's really fascinating. I do think without Russell, we don't get Tony winning, possibly. Like, I do agree with that. That's really fascinating to think about. Like, if Russell Hantz does win Samoa, because I don't think he had any chance of winning Heroes versus Villains, but if he wins Samoa, do we get a Tony win? And I don't actually know that we do, which is crazy.
Right. I think that lets us move straight into, like, essentially the female version of the Mastermind, because of the way the edit, like I said, we'll talk about that in a different setting. But the femme fatale, the woman with a mission on her mind, who changes the game, who, this is like what? Your Jerry's, your Corinne's, your Danielle's, your Sarah's, your Savannah's, your Parvati's. They are these groups of strong women who basically do what these men in this first category did, but they get this much more, usually quieter edit. They get a quieter edit, unfortunately, but they are usually semi-dominant or fully dominant forces within their seasons. And that's they don't win as often as well. They usually don't win.
Yeah, they usually make it to the end and don't end up winning, or they make it close. I mean, we have to start with Jerry Manthe. I mean, she was the original, Black Widow. In a way, she calls herself that, but also, just femme fatale. She is masterminding things originally on Ogakor, and she's disliked because of it. And so, I mean, that's really interesting to track, starting with Jerry.
Yeah, I think that Jerry kind of the tone. She sets the tone that a woman using sex appeal is a villainous characteristic.
Yes.
Comes down to her edit. They chose that for Jerry because of the negativity the cast gave Jerry for her tactics. So I think we have a completely different story if let's say Jerry goes far and the jury's like, she's able to manipulate people with her body and stuff, and people are like praising her for it. We might see that. Well, we eventually do start seeing that.
Right. Yes.
It takes 16 seasons into it before we see it pay off. Like, I think that if we were to start out the series where this is not seen as a negative characteristic and seen as a positive one, certain players who are categorized as villains would probably not be villains.
Yeah, 100%. Like, if Jerry is seen in a more positive light, she's like not getting booed off stages or, you know, having people like ridicule her off the street. Like,
right.
Yeah, I think Survivor history is completely different with that.
But then I think the next one that we should jump to is Danielle.
Yes. And Danielle is someone that Shane and I have had the pleasure of interviewing, having on recaps. Danielle's just fantastic. She is someone that she got a quieter edit both times. And like, even like the first time in Panama, she is the runner-up. And I feel like she doesn't get as much credit in the edit as she should.
He gets a late bloom villain edit.
Yeah.
Like little specks of it throughout, usually in her confessionals, but it is until she makes the deal and then breaks the deal in the finale with Terry.
Yes. Yep.
That was from being almost considered a non-factor for most fans. I think most people didn't really hurt you too much, but then she's like the witch who screwed Terry out. Like, to me, that's not really even, it shouldn't even categorize her as a villain. No. Smart player, but they choose to make her
a villain,
like this, betraying the hero and screwing him out, and then she gets this like in one last episode, like her edit goes from being kind of like vanilla, maybe leaning a little villain, but to this was the true villain of the season. This girl right here was going to screw your favorite, your challenge superstar out of the game at third place. Okay.
We've talked to Danielle about this, and like we said, like, we don't get it either. Like, you shouldn't have just been labeled a villain because you took out Terry. Like, I mean, it makes sense why she does it. Obviously, her best chance would have been against Aris out of that final four, but it still didn't work out, unfortunately, for Danielle. I would even say, like, early on, they do give her the credit for masterminding the Bob Dog vote. Yeah. So like they do give her some credit there, and she just kind of fades away until the finale.
She's very, and we see that a lot with women. We might not get to discuss them all, but this is a very where they need a villain in the final episode because the main villain of the season has been voted off up to this point.
Right.
They need interest in that finale, so we turn and look at the person, usually a woman, who screws the fan favorite out, and they get to be the villain because there was no other choice in the production's eyes. But I think Corinne also falls in this category. This is where Corinne's not as much about sex appeal as much as I feel like she embodies, and I mean this in the nicest way possible, she embodies the stigma of being like a bitch.
Yeah.
She kind of owns it and actually kind of plays into it even.
Right.
Where I think that to me, I think she's actually one of the more fascinating people to watch because like, I kind of get it. Like, if you think that you're going to fall into this archetype, like what happened to Danielle,
right?
We are kind of similar players, but you're thinking, well, they're probably going to edit me this way anyway. So let me just turn it up to 11. Like, to me, that's fascinating. Like, how comfortable are you with yourself that you're like, you know what? People are going to hate me and I'm going to give them a reason to do so.
Yeah.
I think that like we see her, and then I think the next time we really see it is with
Sarah Lucina. Yeah, I would say for Corinne, it's really funny, like how she just owns being the bitch and she's happy with it. And I think Gabon is like they really don't shy away from showing that side of Corinne. And then Caramone, they kind of shy away from that a little bit. Like I feel like her bitchiness is kind of reserved for Philip Shepard.
This is the thing; they're both shown as villains, but at time the reason it's more acceptable the second time is because she's going against the pariah villain.
Right.
And it's more acceptable if a main villain is going against a pariah because the audience usually, I mean, that's an episode for itself, the pariah. But anyway, usually the audience is told these people don't like this person and here's why.
Yeah.
Into like why people don't like that person. But yeah, I think Corinne is fascinating to me. She actually probably embodies the villain role for a woman more than any other person, woman-wise, female-wise, because she truly owns it. Like she knew, and then she kind of played into it her second run. So
yeah. And then Sarah Lucina, you brought up President Lucina. Obviously, she I can definitely see where Sarah is the villain. I think the edit didn't do her justice as much, even in Game Changers. Like, I feel like she did even more villainous things that we've heard about after. Like, she took Brad Culpepper's wedding ring and like took something special to Troy's and was like, okay, this is to guarantee that you're both with me. So I find that fascinating, and I wish they would have leaned more into it in Game Changers with Sarah Lucina.
Right. I think with Sarah, the reason I put her in the villain edit is because when you're looking at Sarah as a player, she leans toneless a lot.
Yes.
But it is the reaction that we got from the cast that's what makes me think she's the villain. Obviously, you went into that, but so she's interesting. But I also think that she probably gets a more villain edit if the Varner villain edit doesn't happen.
Right.
So I think that they were so afraid of the negativity that was going to bring that they toned down who I think was going to be the season-long villain, which I believe was going to be Sarah.
Yeah, I can agree with that, because like you have her coming out defending Zeke and talking about like her beliefs and how that doesn't affect how she sees Zeke, and then we get to the merge, and I do feel like the season really downplays her edit at that point. So I do agree with that for sure.
Like a note, out of all the female like villains in this archetype, she's probably the closest one to getting more of a mastermind edit than a femme fatale edit.
Yeah.
The reason we get the femme fatale edit with her, it ends up boiling down to her ability to control most of the men on the cast, not through sex appeal, but through literal like queen shit. Like that, like taking their belongings and being like, if you want this back, you're gonna take me to the end and let me win. But like, she is probably the closest we've ever got to see to a female getting like, because of the way the edit ended up making. Unfortunately, she didn't get the edit she deserved, or else I think she would actually probably be in the Masterminds group.
Yeah.
But a lot of her strategy got cut out in order to make the season less negative.
Yeah. 100%.
Then we jump to the new era with Savannah, who kind of is the new age version of the femme fatale, because we went a long time without really getting one.
Right.
Where I'll just be honest, I think Savannah has one of the more fun winner edits that we get in the new era. Like, I kind of knew she was going to win because of you know, whenever they're like, hey, we're bringing back 2 people, and then they're like, oh, there's an extra winner on the cast, that means one or two of these 2 people won.
Right.
But anyway, her edit is very strategic, but we also, like you mentioned earlier, we do get to see like that some people just did not like her. Right. Like, care for her as a person, and we're actively trying to sabotage her at Final Tribal Council. We're looking at you.
Right.
But I think that she kind of rounds out like what this eventually became, because it started out very negative with Jerry, and now we have actually two of the last 2 won. So this was like an evolving archetype and edit, to where I think that it started out in a highly negative reception from the audience, to the point where I think most audience members actually enjoy the last 2 people we talked about.
Yeah. I think with Savannah, like, she got such a complex edit. Like, I do agree that her edit was interesting. If like the spoilers weren't out there because of 50, then I think people probably enjoy her win more, or her journey more. But yeah, I do find Savannah very fascinating because of how complex she is. Like, we're not getting like this one-dimensional villain. We're getting someone that has layers to them. They have this like emotional backstory that like humanizes them, but there's also still like that femme fatale, that villainous edit to her as well. So
I think that the big real difference is whenever a woman gets the femme fatale edit, it is a combination of things that are associated strictly with women on the show compared to men. And this is the unfairness and the bias of it. But the reason they get labeled a femme fatale while most men get labeled a mastermind is because women sometimes have sex appeal on their side. They get the bitch mantra a lot. They get it. It just boils down to the fact that I feel like production, even to this day, is almost afraid not to give an edge to a woman, because they're thinking the edge might help make her more respected by the audience. So that's just an unfairness and bias. But we can go into that later. But I just say that's the key factor. It is the biases women get that separates them from the men when it comes to the edit.
100%.
The next villain I have to talk about is the hypocrite.
I love this one.
I want to read exactly what I have written down to define it. I put, these are players that held standards that they could not live up to. So
Yes.
these are villains who have a standard of usually, what do you call it, holier than thou, or honor, integrity, blah, blah, blah. But they don't hold up to it themselves, and they're portrayed on the show and to the cast usually as hypocrites, because they are like, what, the false prophets of Survivor.
Yes.
This is like the first one we ever see is in Africa.
African All-Stars with Lex. Yeah. Lex is super fascinating because he wants to have like integrity in the game, but then he's like, oh, it's all business. But like then he gets mad if like you do it to him.
Right.
So it's really fascinating. I mean, he does this to Clarence in Africa, right? Like right off at the merge, where he basically is like, well, I can't lie to Clarence's face. I have to have integrity and do this, even though I'm, stabbing Clarence in the back. And then All Stars is like the major example of it.
Kelly.
Yes, Kelly Goldsmith. Yeah.
He screws Kelly out of the game, T-Bird, who voted against him.
Yes, exactly.
This is and then like you said, All Stars with Boston Rob. The thing about Lex is actually a really entertaining person and really fun to watch on the show. I actually really like Lex, but he's a hypocritical villain. This is somebody who holds a standard to other people that he's not willing to hold up to himself, and it makes. Actually, to me, it makes him one of the more interesting cases in the early seasons of like we see him in Africa. We don't get our next true hypocrite until season 12 with Shane.
Yeah, we can get to Shane in a second. I did want to say with Lex, I mean, like again in All Stars, like he feels so betrayed by Boston Rob, but he does it to Ethan, who he's been great friends with since their season. Like that is wild to me, because like everybody brings it up all the time of what he did to Ethan, and I feel like then people try to still discredit that, being like, well, no, but Boston Rob and Lex were like super close. It's like Ethan and Lex were so close, like they were an alliance and lasted 38 days together, and were friends after the show and are still friends to this day. So
also, like, while you're bringing that up, you also really have to look at the fact that, like, if Lex does not take this viewpoint that he openly talks and discusses with the rest of his cast and is shown in the confessionals talking to the viewers about, and instead takes the act of Ethan's already won, Ethan's a big threat, Ethan's got to go, and then does not, like, he could have easily avoided this edit, because I actually agree, Ethan probably should have went, but you went about explaining yourself, turned you into this type of villain.
Right. Exactly. So Lex is fascinating. Let's hit Shane Powers, one of my favorite characters in Survivor history, because he's just a lunatic at times, and it's so funny. But he absolutely has that hypocritical edge to him, where like again he has these standards where he wants to have like integrity, and he's going to make these deals where he swears on his son. But then he's going to end up like backstabbing people as well. And just like, Bob Dog, for example, where he like swears on his son he's not going to vote Bobby out, and then he purposely throws his vote so Bobby will still go. Like Shane is super interesting, super fascinating. And like, I love him as a character. But as a player, he's an absolute hypocrite.
Yeah. I think that the big thing is like, obviously a player, because of complexity, players can be more than just one. I think what you hit on it, the reason why he ends up being a hypocrite is because of the promises, and then the breaking of the promises, and then being upset when other people break their promises.
Right.
But like, we also see like Shane, in my opinion, one of the funniest.
The shitty apartment.
Yeah, the shitty apartment game, where he blatantly threatens the life. I shouldn't laugh at this. I shouldn't, but it's so crazy. And then that player, because of how Shane is as a person, knows that he's like just insane and a hypocrite. So she's like, my apartment isn't shitty. Like, out of all the things that statement, that was the one that should have offended her the least, but it's the one she brings up, and it is like so awkward, so funny. But Shane is the cursor for the next person on this list.
Yeah. So who is the next person on the list after Shane to come up as this? Is this Coach?
For hypocrite in Survivor history, we see in Token Shane's, where has a legacy spanning
4 seasons.
The entirety of the rest of Survivor history from 18 on, as probably one of the most compelling hypocrites I've ever seen in my entire life. He is so, every time Coach is on screen, I am usually laughing and having a great time with it. I know some people get annoyed with it, but he is the, if you were going to pick one for the entire history of Survivor to own this archetype, it is Coach.
Yes, 100%. Like, Coach is so fascinating because the only reason I feel like he ends up as a villain in Heroes versus Villains off of Token Teens is because he's a hypocrite and everybody knows he's full of shit. Like, that is the reason. And so Coach is just hilarious. Like, I mean, the martyr approach alone is one of the greatest episodes of Survivor ever, still to this day. And just like, it's so funny, across 4 seasons, Coach never changes. He is a complete hypocrite. I mean, South Pacific, we're literally going to get him leading a cult, but preaching honor and integrity.
South Pacific is where it comes to full form.
Yes.
Because the truth is throughout most of Token Chains and Heroes versus Villains, he comes across crazy. And you get hints of hypocritical gameplay from the other players. However, it is full display when we get to South Pacific, where he is making deals with people and breaking them immediately, preaching integrity, trustworthiness, truthfulness. And he has about as much as Russell Hantz. I mean, people out left and right and like doing it on the mantra of like, we love Jesus. I mean,
so bad. Yeah, and then obviously he's gonna then still claim that he's preaching honor and integrity at Final Tribal Council, which is why he loses. So
we only have one to talk about, and it's our only female hypocrite player that I could really like say 100% this is a hypocrite, and it's in San Juan del Sur with Missy.
Yeah, Missy is interesting because like she is one where I just did not like her because she is like, she's, you know, wasting all the rice, you know, people are eating all of it and she's kind of just like trying to be the mother role, but then she's mistreating other people, and then she's, you know, excusing things that her daughter does when
right.
you know her daughter is acting like a brat.
And when other people act that way, she gets on to them.
Yes.
So this is like where we get, and I think that the best part of this is when we get to Final Tribal and it comes full circle and you get to hear how the jury feels about her, particularly Reed.
Yes.
The stepmother reference of being the evil stepmother and how she would give extra rice to Baylor, but then complain when other people ate extra lot rice or these things. And I think that I wish we would have got to see it more. Honestly. I wish the edit would have played into it because I honestly think she might have went down as one of the, like, I don't want to say best because best would imply that she was good at the game. I don't think she was that good. But the best in the sense of entertainment, she could have been one of the most interesting villains we'd had up to that point, where we have an evil stepmother villain, which would have been great in Survivor to have their evil queen villain who's like giving kindness and joy to her favorites and despair and bullshit to the people she dislikes.
Missy doing that, I mean, it's totally understandable why people felt that way, and I do think they could have leaned into it more, absolutely, and had more fun with it. I think that would have been fun to see.
So the next one is the arrogant alliances. These come in multiple forms. I think 2 really. It's either they're arrogant because they're in control of the game, or they're arrogant because they think they're better than everyone else at the game and understand the game better. I have the Row 2-4 as the first original group of villains, where we basically get told like they have a pecking order, they're sticking to their pecking order, and if you're not in the pecking order, you're expected to support the pecking order.
Yes.
And enjoy your 7th, 8th, or 7th, 6th, 5th place finish, and vote for one of them to win. I think it's kind of funny because like none of these people ever return. Right.
And John Carroll is someone that absolutely should have. And I would categorize, we haven't talked about John Carroll as a villain. I think he was a villain in Marquesas, and like he has that satisfying villain downfall, one of the most satisfying in the history of the show. And I think this is a perfect place to talk about John Carroll, obviously, because like we get to talk about this downfall of this arrogant alliance because they let the pecking order be known.
Yeah, and I mean, and he's not the only. Like I'm shocked Tammy was never invited back because I think Tammy was a really strong player in Marquesas. But that's beside the point. The 4 of them get the domino effect downfall where their bottom members of their alliance who are supposed to like 5th, 6th, and 7th place flip to the minority 2, and then now they're the minority 4, and they get 9th, 8th, 7th, 6th back to back to back. And I think that that's where we see the start of this, and I think we don't see it again really for a long time. It's not until I think we get the Black Widows where we see a group of women this time really take on the villain role of being, you know, what would you call it? A dominant alliance that outright demolishes every man in the game and even eliminates their oppositions of other women who could potentially have control. I think that we see this with them taking out early in the game Yao Man. I think that probably a Black Widow move more than it was like an Aussie James.
100%. Yeah.
We see this whenever they snipe out Amy and Eliza back to back.
Yes.
We see it, and then we just see the men fall like dominoes until we get down to Eric winning immunity at 6, and they have to eat one of their own.
Yeah.
Only to send Eric home in one of the most humiliating fashions in Survivor history. So I think that this is actually interesting because this is one of the few times where the Arrogant Alliance was portrayed positive.
Yeah. They portray this as a positive. They have for 18 years. They celebrate this alliance and this win so much, and I think it's because this Arrogant Alliance actually is good at the game, as opposed to other Arrogant Alliances like the Row 2-4 who are not good at the game.
This group that was in the position of power and kept it.
Yes.
So obviously what's interesting is that despite giving them all a villain edit throughout most of Micronesia, when we see members of this alliance return the next time there's a returning season, 2 of them are thrown as heroes and one of them gets all of the credit. Which we later found out that it was because she was supposed to be on the heroes team and they felt like there were too many from Micronesia, so they had to flip her and Candace, which Candace is questionable. We'll get to Candace later.
Candace as a hero is funny.
I was about to say, listen, if Candace can be a hero, I can be a hero. Devin for heroes versus villains.
Yes.
But anyway, I do think that's fascinating because even though the alliance was portrayed as the bad guys that season, 2 of them ended up actually, I would say 3 of the main group got positive edits, despite being the bad guys.
Right. Yeah. I would 100% agree with that. I think Natalie Bolton is the one of those 4, I suppose, that final 4 who completely owned being the villain.
Flossing teeth with their jugular.
Yes, exactly.
When you give, but that's another thing. This is the edit. When it comes to the edit, it is, you can blame it on the edit, but you said it. Okay. So if you were the one who said it. And so if you give them a soundbite as good as I'm flossing my teeth with their jugular, they're going to use it. Use it. So she owned it though. So I applaud that. So if you're going to give villain sound bites, you got to understand you're getting a villain edit.
Yes.
I think the next one is the Apollo cult. That's what I have written down.
Yes, family.
Where they're straight up portrayed as the holier than thou villains that ruin the Savai, which is so funny because I think post season and we found out things most of the Savai people were kind of awful.
Yeah.
Not to say that they deserve any negativity, they don't, but the way that they chose to treat some of their members was poor. But it wasn't that way on the show. Instead, we get another person who's also gets a villain edit in that season, and then later returns and gets a hero edit. But
yes.
Point, but we do get this band of the show was just let's show them praying over finding an idol they found 4 days ago. That clearly a hypocritical alliance, clearly they kind of used the Boston Rob buddy system thing to a degree. They prayed for their adversary's downfall.
Yeah.
Let's go and hope that Dawn loses.
Oh my God. Yeah, I mean, we didn't mention him in the hypocrite, but I could consider Brandon Hantz a hypocrite because he's saying things that are just very hypocritical and in this majority alliance and just, very, very bad, obviously. And then Brandon has, the stuff with Michaela that's very gross and hypocritical. So,
well, I mean, sometimes it took 2 returns, the casting and return of a nephew and the casting of a brother on Big Brother for them that maybe we shouldn't cast Hantz's on the show anymore.
Yeah.
It took a lot of, sometimes we learn lessons like that, and sometimes, it takes a little bit of repetitive. You got to write on the wall, I will not cast another Hantz. But
Look, Mom, no hands.
Yeah. I think that the Apollo group is so funny to me because most of them probably weren't villains. They were just being culted into the villain group where they don't. It's kind of funny, especially with Edna and Rick, where they're kind of portrayed as like nobodies who are just mindless followers to the group. And their boot episodes, they're like, oh, shit, I'm in a cult and I'm at the bottom of the cult.
Oh, God, Rick and Edna. Oh my God. And it's just crazy to me how Coach doesn't take Rick and Edna to the end of the game.
I think Edna wins. I'm not going to lie. If he continues with that jury thing, Edna probably wins the game because or I think everybody liked Rick. Rick might win the game.
Okay, I mean, yeah, I guess Rick might win the game. I don't know. I feel like people were annoyed with Edna, but a little more than they were. Like, I feel like they would have been annoyed by Rick. Like, I don't think they would have been as annoyed by him.
Yeah, but then we only got one more that I want to talk about, and that's the Witch's Coven that we see in Second Chance. This is the example of the people who think they're just better players than the people they're around, and it's Cass, Abby Maria, Sierra, and
Kelly
Wentworth. And they get this villain edit, which, to be fair, is more toneless for most of them. I mean, Cass, obviously, Chaos Cass is getting a villain edit. Even if she came in and praised Jesus the entire time and had became a devout Christian, she would have got the villain edit because she's Chaos Cass. But we do see where the villain edit is kind of split, mostly between her and Sierra and Abby. Wentworth kind of gets to be like the golden child who can't do no wrong in that season, but she's part of this alliance, if people remember. Yep. And, it comes down to the way that they were portrayed in the game. Cass is portrayed as I gave Spencer a second chance, so Spencer owes me a second chance. Girl, you should have voted Spencer's ass out, okay? But anyway, if you didn't want to go home, you should have voted Spencer's ass out. And then, you turn around and you got, Abby being Abby. And you got Sierra, who's kind of preaching, we got to make big moves, guys. I'm the only one who makes big moves here, and you guys are all pansies for not making big moves, which is kind of obviously she doesn't say that, but that's the edit. What the edit's kind of putting in our face. She's the one who's we need to make big moves if you want to win this game, and I'm the only one who knows how to make big moves. So I think that that's just kind of interesting because clearly, that group, I don't know if anybody's ever talked about it. That they go home spaced apart correctly, right?
Yeah. So, because it's Cass at 13, Sierra at 10, Abby at 7, and Kelly Wentworth at 4th. Yeah, wow. Yeah.
Between them. So I think that's also kind of fascinating. For those conspiracy theorists out there. But anyway, that moves us into the flip-floppers. Obviously, this is going to be the people who flipped multiple times or had a significant flip that screwed a lot of people out of the game. And I know that you're a big fan of the first one, which is,
Yeah, Rob Cesternino. I mean, he defined how the Survivor strategy would evolve in Amazon. I mean, the pendulum strategy is something that I would love to be able to do. Something I wanted to do in our season didn't work out, but I think it's fascinating to be able to define I'm going to flip from one alliance to another and then flip back, and I just think we'd never seen that in the first 6 seasons, and I honestly we do obviously see it continuously, but I don't think we've ever seen it to the extent that Rob Cesternino was able to do it quite as well.
I do want to make a quick point. The difference between a villain flip-flopper and a regular person who flipped is the edit.
Yeah.
Technically, Pascal and Nalea flipped, but they were shown doing it for the right reasons because they were on the bottom and the other people were treating them badly. But Rob, we are getting strategic insight, the strategic villain, into why he's flipping, and he flips multiple times. So you got somebody like him who pretty much changes the way Survivor can be played in playing the middle of being kind of a flip-floppy. In Big Brother, they call them floaters. Grab a life vest. I think that makes more sense for Big Brother than Survivor, but whatever. Brother. But anyway, point being, this is a strategy that we would see on other shows even evolve. So I think that I give him credit for definitely pinpointing how to do this strategy, because I think he was one vote away from probably winning that game. So we don't see major flip-floppers until we get 2 in the same season in Cook Islands with one of the best casting choices of all time in Jonathan Penner.
Yes.
Candace, who is somehow a hero. No, girl, she was a villain.
Yeah, she was a villain. I mean, Candace is very, very odd to me because like even in Cook Islands, like they really portray her as a villain. Like it's not even portrayed as heroic like heroes versus villains they wanted it to seem. Like she's immediately, ostracized by the alliance she just flipped on. They're repeatedly sending her to Exile Island just for the jokes at that point because they just don't like her and they just want to send her there repeatedly. And then, of course, Penner. I mean, Penner flipped multiple times. He was seen as unlikable because he flipped so many times. Penner is one of the greatest casting choices in the history of the show. As a character, he's bold.
I think that this is also, like, for what we were talking about at the beginning of this, it can be one of two things that make you a flip-flop villain. It can either be what Penner did, which was flip and flop and flip and flop, back and forth until he gets voted out. Or it can be one specific flip that happened that screwed your allies out of the game, which is what Candace did. But it didn't actually screw them out of the game. Her former alliance ended up dominating the game. But when we're shown it as this girl just walked out on her whole tribe because she wanted Adam. So I think that they are actually two really good examples of what can be considered a flip-flopper. I think the next one is Cochran, who gets a more Candace type of flop where he just straight up flips on somebody, causes them to go home, and then goes home right immediately as soon as it's possible for him to go home. I don't know if there's much else to talk about with Cochran unless you have something to say.
Yeah, I mean, Cochran is a perfect example as well. And he's also a complex villain in South Pacific because, we see that he's doing this because he's felt ostracized by his tribe. And then they continue to ostracize him after he does it, with Whitney calling him disgusting. I don't know how you're supposed to want to work with someone anymore after they just basically call you a horrible, disgusting human.
This is the thing. I almost left Cochran off because we're shown that his flip is for the right reasons.
Yeah.
The problem is the reason I ended up adding him on is because you turn around and you're like, okay, so we're told he's treated awful and he screws people out of the game by flipping on them, maybe rightfully so. But then the edit swings to where Opolu is the villain. The Opolu cult is like the bad people who are just picking off all the Sedais and not necessarily being, I wouldn't say they're being unkind, but they're not giving them a fair shake or whatever, however you want to word it. So we're stuck in this position where Cochran kind of gets a positive / negative edit. The Opolu people mostly get negative edits. And then certain members of this fight get toneless edits because they were supposed to be the villains to Cochran, but they can't show them as villains because they need them to be likable because the Opolus are supposed to be the bad guys. And then you get the two people who were truly screwed out of the game because they actually were treating Cochran kind, which are Jim and Dawn.
Yeah.
And that's where his villain comes from, is that he screws two of the more decent people on his tribe out of the game when he screws everyone out of the game.
Right, exactly. Yeah, the two people who actually had been trying to make moves with him, with Jim and Don literally help him vote out Elise at that and the pre-merge and save him. So yeah.
The next big flipper, Chaos Cass in Kaga, with one of the biggest flips in Survivor history, with Sarah getting blindsided. And I think it's funny because we're shown why she's going to flip. Sarah is being wishy-washy. Sarah's not committing to anything, but she clearly is on their side, but she's not making it shown. And then the flip happens and Cass goes from middle of the road type player to this is the villain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the most entertaining tribal councils of all time for multiple reasons. Cass is she is fascinating because she flips for chaotic reasons multiple times in the season. She flips on Garrett because Garrett's an idiot, but she flips that early on, and then obviously flips at the merge. And I mean, she is such a fun character, such a fun player. But also, she does piss off so many people by doing it.
Her villain edit starts with the flip and then turns into a personal villain from there on out. but we are shown, like, I have to put her as a hybrid because we are shown why she's doing what she's doing. Like,
yes. Yeah.
At the end of the day, super compelling TV. Clearly. Yeah. And then we move into the new era is where I actually have the next two, which is Jesse.
Yeah.
We see flip on Cody at the final six.
Yes.
And it's probably one of the most emotional flips. But weird because, like, he clearly did a villain move, but then the guy he did it to leaves with appreciation. So, to me, Jesse has to be a villain.
Yeah, Jesse is 100% a villain. I mean, he's also doing things. He's getting people's idols and taking them. And Jesse is such a fun new era player, and we just don't get enough of these like villains at all in the new era. And like Jesse is one of those exceptions that he made 43 interesting. And that Cody move right before the finale is just so fascinating. And you see in that moment of like, yeah, Cody has the appreciation, but he's also pissed at the same time. But it's like you have that handshake and like the emotions there. And yeah, and even Jesse is shown to be complex, like when he loses fire and you have him have that big emotional moment on his way out. And I like Jesse a lot.
The new era, Jeff openly admitted they are trying not to make villains.
Yeah.
They're everybody complex in it. But I would say to Jeff, you can't have a story without a villain.
Exactly. I agree.
Like, it's not fair. No. You can try to make them a complex villain. Actually, I embrace making them a complex villain. But you can't say there's not villains. There's villains. If there's heroes. But that brings us to our last major flip-flopper villain. One of your favorites. Yes. Rizzo, when he flips on Sari and Ozzy in 50 and gets Ozzy voted out at the double tribal, and then essentially flips on Sari shortly after and sends her home at final 6. So I think that this flip is mostly seen through the eyes of people who were pro the, what was it called? The Sari's pro that. There's a devastating flip, but yet again, we know why he did it, because he had no chance. He would have lost to probably Ozzy and Sari.
100%. And I think it's justified. I mean, the fact that Ozzy still doesn't want to talk to Rizzo to this day is just wild. But yeah, the man, the myth, the legend, RIZGOD, Riz God, baby. Like, I'm a huge fan of Rizzo's game, especially in 49. I think his 49 game, like, even just like flipping like constantly within his little, he has his trio obviously, but he's flipping within to try to get the majority to flip on each other. And right. Like I feel like this just, he's such a fascinating player to me. And like, again, he is polarizing. People love him or they hate him. So
I actually fall on the, I like Rizzo. So I mean, I'm not even going to compete for your fandom of Rizzo, but I actually enjoy Rizzo as a character and a player. I think he's very compelling. I think that Rizzo is kind of the closest thing we have in the new era to a pinner. Obviously, as a pro pinner person, I would have been pro pinner on 50, but we already discussed that. But anyway, point being, I think that brings us into the next one. This is a smaller category because this type of villain got basically dropped on us in the middle of Pearl Islands, and then it kind of got divulged into other types. But we get fair play as the liar, the person who is defined by their lies within the game. And obviously villains are going to lie, but this was like, his was so specific that I had to make its own category, because his transcended the game, where he literally lied about the death of a family member in a way to court sympathy, hoping that he got to the end, he wins. And I know for a fact that he took a lot of inspiration from Rob Cesternino's game. Yeah, his is so fascinatingly different, because Rob played the game in a strategic, like, let's do what's best for me at this time type of way. While fair play seemed to be like, if I get to that family visit, I'm going to drop a lie and tell them my grandma died. So I'm going to make talk at least a couple times about how amazing and much I love my grandmother. It was just, I mean, to be fair, it's one of the most compelling pieces of reality TV, not just competition, just in general. Like, everybody, people who don't even watch Survivor still know about the grandma.
Yes. I Fair Play's Dead Grandma Lie is one of the greatest reality TV moments, 100%, one of the greatest Survivor moments. Shane and I have also had the pleasure of talking to Johnny Fairplay, And I think he's just a very interesting person, a very interesting Survivor player. And the fact that he did take what Rob Cesternino did in Amazon and still had his own spin on that type of gameplay is really fascinating. Like, and just how much he keeps up that lie after he does it too, to like manipulate Lil and Dara, and like it's so fun. It's so fun.
It's really the because of how iconic it was, it made me have to add this category. I actually don't have but one other person that I threw into this category, and to be fair, it was because I felt like they're the closest thing to where I think the lies they said in the game were maybe the most reason, and it's actually Kyle Jason. And it was not really that he lied like Johnny Fairplay did. It was just like how often him and Scott would choose to tell people certain things were going to happen and then do completely different things. So they just kind of lied often. And so it was kind of like, where does Kyle Jason fit as a villain? I kind of threw him here just because I didn't want to just have Johnny Fairplay, but I do think throughout the game, we've seen him do multiple aspects of different types of villainy. And one of them was how often he would lie to certain people about what him and his team were going to do. We saw him lie a lot to Ty, trying to make Ty use the whole thing, because they were going to take him to the end when they clearly had no ambitions on trying to get Ty to the end of the game. So he's more here by default in that he can kind of fit into any category. So I just kind of lumped him in with fair play so we had more to talk about than just fair play.
Yeah. Jason's an interesting one. I hadn't really pegged him specifically as a liar, but like I see what you're going with. I think another person I want to put in, because they can fit into 3 categories, I will bring him up. From Australian Survivor, we got to talk about King George Mladenov. I think King George, not just because he's close to fair play, but like also just like, I think he can be viewed as a mastermind. I think he can be viewed as a flip-flopper. I think he can be viewed as a liar. Like King George is specifically for that Heroes versus Villains, Australian Survivor Heroes versus Villains Tribal Council, where he manages to take 3 people's votes and manages to then divide the majority and get Fraser out of the game. Just like a masterclass in Survivor strategy and villainy. And I think King George deserves to be brought up here.
Oh, okay. So, unfortunately, I've only ever watched Pia's season but this does let us get to one of my favorite categories of villains, the Black Widow.
Yes.
Christened by a player we'll get to actually second in this order. Big negative edits for it. And we got to start with my favorite player, the person who christened this strategy, Ice Queen Amy, from where, honestly, I feel like outside of Jerry Manthe was one of the first actual mainstream main female villains where audience was very polarized by Amy's gameplay back whenever this was airing. And clearly she was brought back because she was, at that time, very iconic to the game. I think she's kind of underrated there nowadays. But this type of strategy was kind of bred into the game. I think they wanted it in Amazon. And because they didn't get it, I think they decided to try it again in Vanuatu, and this time they get it. They get a kingpin of a certain gender. It ends up being women. And this kingpin is honestly kind of just because of what they can edit with her. Because it's truly her and Leanne in the game.
Yes.
Because Amy's the one giving the sound bites and the confessionals that they need to portray the story, we get Amy as the figurehead, and then Leanne gets demoted to second in command to Amy.
Yes.
So I think that this is always a fun way to see a villain arc of where it's like, we're going to take you out, like shake a machete in your face with Amy. She does this. I want Amy back so I can see who she shakes their machete at next.
Yes.
Players. So, but we see this perfected later down the line with Parvati, the Queen of Black Widows, completely dominates her season. Obviously, we already talked about the Black Widow Brigade, but like Parvati fits both because I think that she got to be the Black Widow herself, but she also was in the Alliance type of villain as well. So that's why I said they can overlap.
Yeah. Well, and so for Amy, I mean, another person we've gotten to interview here, and Amy is always just like, I love that they portray her as the Ice Queen. Like, I love that. I think she's such a fascinating player that she really dominates, like, her and Leanne really dominate the women's tribe. and just like, and even like the SWAT tribe and then the merge up until, you know, Amy then has that human level of emotion that comes out that ultimately is going to stop her from making the right decision to get rid of Chris when they need to, and ends up screwing over her game. And Amy's fascinating, and obviously then Micronesia doesn't end up going as well because, you know, a real life thing that happened right before Micronesia, so it kind of hurt her chances when she got into that game. Parvati, yeah, 100%. Like Amy set like she built the foundations, and Parvati took that and ran with it. Yeah, exactly.
What I think is fascinating with those two in particular is it was their gameplays on their seasons, and to this day we hear it almost every season that people are afraid of an all-female alliance. More so, you never hear them say, "Oh, what about that all-guys alliance?" That's not a worry. Now that all-girls alliance, we've seen what that can lead to. But I only actually have one other, and it's kind of funny because yet again, it's another season where they started out divided by sexes, and it's Alicia actually from One World.
Yeah.
Weirdly, despite Kim winning, Kim is not given a villain edit at all. We're just shown that Kim is super smart, super likable, amazing. She's the best thing ever. She's going to win the game, and you all can get over it and love it to Kim. That's basically what they tell us. And then they're like, but I know you all want some villainy, so here's this crazy woman who also thinks she's Kim.
Yeah.
I think that's why I put her there, because I think she thought she was the Black Widow in the brigade.
She did.
But
yeah.
It's kind of funny to watch it unfold when she finds out that she is not the leading this Black Widow brigade, that in fact this is like Queen Goddess Kim's chariot ride to $1 million, and she's just one of the horses. But
yeah, she's been delusional all along. Yeah, Alicia, I mean, I think like she was obviously given the villain edit because of the awful things she said all season long.
And then they're like, and she's in charge of Tarzan and Christina.
Not Tarzan and Christina.
But all jokes aside, I do think that she still falls in this category because she thought she was running a brigade of women, only to realize that she was not the queen in the chariot. She was the donkey pulling it. So no edit on top of it, which differentiates her from a Parvati or an Amy, where they're seen as forces to be reckoned with. She's kind of portrayed as like a joke. So yeah. Next, I have the fall from grace.
Yep.
This is more of an arc than it is an actual archetype. We've seen this. We can talk about whichever ones you want, because I don't want to like them, but like you got Stephanie with her arc from Palau to Guatemala, which is a villain. Dreams, where we get to see his arc from being kind of like the guy that people didn't treat with respect to now he's the person who's the villain because he, you know, took a car from Man. Varner's another one where we get to see Varner kind of get like start of a villain arc in Australian Outback, come back and actually kind of get like a redemption arc, what feels like a redemption arc in Second Chance, only to come back to form and fall from grace. This was like faceplant from grace, like insert fart noise as he hits the ground levels. I think Chrissy is a good example of this from Heroes Killers, where she's portrayed as the super mom who's amazing and, you know, is a all-American woman, and then it turns out like she's just kind of a ruthless player who will cut anyone's throat that she can. Angelina, I think, gets a fall from grace arc, but hers is really funny because hers is a fall for grace into Dodo. Like she first gets come across as like she's in the strategic majority, she's clearly talking about the game, and then a flip happens and we get Jacket Gate. And on that fall from grace is a slow descent. Oh, it's not even slow. It's like it just turns out like when she said she climbed a million, what was it, like a 1,000-foot ladder?
Ladder. Yeah, it was a fall from grace off a 1,000-foot high ladder.
Yeah. Every branch on the way down, because we got to see every single one. So fascinating, but definitely a villain edit. Like
100%.
I think Shan got a villain edit in the new era.
Yes. Yeah, Shan's is interesting because she's the one who is seen as like the mastermind of the pre-merge of 41, and then she has then where her domineering attitude at the merge is going to turn some people off and end up turning her closest ally Ricard against her. So
we actually got Emily here, who gets the weirdest edit of the because she actually starts a villain, ends a hero, and then on her second return is almost hell-bent on making sure she leaves a villain.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
It's weird because this one is where it's not an actual archetype. A lot of these are, some of these are all multi-seasonal.
Yeah.
Like growth to villain. And that's makes this one very different from the rest. If you want to talk about it.
Yeah, so I did want to talk about Stephanie's, because Stephanie is like the antithesis of this, and she just everything that she's the fan favorite in Palau, that everybody loves Stephanie. Everybody's crazy about Stephanie, how she is the last member of her tribe left. And then we get to Guatemala and she becomes this villain. Like, she has a complete heel turn that people are saying that it's Stephanie's evil twin, because like everybody is shocked that she is now all of a sudden come out and she's like part of this. I would say she's part of an Aryan alliance too, because that alliance thought they had it made when they're picking off like Bobby John and Brandon and Gary. And like, yeah, I just like Stephanie is like, where, you know, it's theorized like if she makes it to the end of Palau, she probably wins. Her story is so good. And then we get to Guatemala and she makes it to the end and everybody hates her. So
this, like I said, this one was very different from the rest, because this one is reliant on the edit and on their personal journeys. I just think that overall, this one is one where you can kind of say you have to be paying attention to see if they're the villain. Like, because if you're not paying attention or like, oh, I love Stephanie, Stephanie's amazing, and you go through Guatemala with the goggles of Palau, you're not going to realize she's the villain. Mm-hmm. But if you take off the love goggles, you're like, she was a bad guy this time.
Yeah.
We got two more. The next two are going to be fun for us to talk about, I know.
Yes.
Next one, and they're actually two ends of the same coin. The difference is one of them is, what differentiates them for me is the first group we talk about were liked by the majority of their cast while they were on the show, and the second group were disliked by the majority of their cast while they were on the show. For sports. Players that left the game or spread negativity throughout the game. So we actually are going to jump right into Guatemala with Judd.
Yeah. Yep. Judd Sargent. Judd is fascinating because like he literally gets called out for his poor sportsmanship by Margaret, and leads to the whole ADD fight. Judd is, and then obviously he has the whole moment with "Hope you all get bit by frickin' crocodile." Like Judd is so fun as a poor sport. Like, I don't know. I enjoy Guatemala more than some people, just because you have people like Judd that are just really funny to watch.
I mean, I think Guatemala is probably an underrated season. Like, real fun people. After Judd, I have Randy.
Yes, Randy is
the cookies. Randy, his team loses in the pre-merge. His dislike for anyone from Fong. The fact that he tells Jeff that GC and Crystal are running Fong like it's a gang. Like, just all the way down to like whenever Sugar just like is so over his shit that she literally is like, Bob, will you potentially throw your game away so that we can make Randy look like an idiot on the way out the door? Like, God. Really weird is like the people who disliked Randy were the people he disliked, but people who liked Randy he really liked. So it's like he was very like polarizing to the cast. Some people loved Randy, people fucking hated Randy.
Yeah, Randy's funny, and like, I mean, that's why he was on Heroes versus Villains, is because he literally was just this angry like villain, and where he was so polarizing in Gabon, and was like the main reason of why we kind of had a Heroes versus Villains thing with Sugar versus Randy in Gabon, and like, you know, Sugar wanting the good people to win.
Yeah, well, and then they came back and we've seen what happens when you put people from the cast of Gabon on an actual cast.
They both flop really hard.
First people voted out of their tribe. But speaking of, after Heroes versus Villains, we actually get our next major poor sport in the quitter, Nehunka.
Yes.
And her, I'm going to kick her freaking leg out from under her. Her hatred for Fabio throughout the entire game, only to vote Fabio to win because he smokes weed. All of the pettiness and despair that Nehunka brought. And to be fair, as a quitter, she's probably the only quitter they would ever consider recasting, just because of how much gold you get from her for the.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Nehunka is crazy to me. Like, she I guess supposedly she actually had a chance to win, and I guess she had some control in the game when, like, especially when she left, and because she quit, they showed all of her negative moments. So yeah, Nyanka is a wild one, and yeah, the whole thing with Fabio, yeah, it's just I wish they would have kind of tried to explain it better, because it's just like, you're watching the season and you're just not expecting Nyanka to ever vote Fabio under any circumstance.
Yeah, but then it turns out that they actually had a great relationship because they both bonded over the fact that they're celebrators of 420.
Yes.
We go from these last three where we can truly laugh at their, debauchery and villainousness to another quitter, a two-time quitter in Colton, where he came by and he left. This is the thing, like, this guy, he had allies. That's what's weird. He had allies. He had people on the cast who wanted to work with him both times. It's just like one of my favorite Colton moments. Actually, okay, my sole Colton moment that I actually find entertaining is when on his return, whenever Kat and him are on the
raft. And before I hit you with this freaking paddle. That is a wild moment that I'm so glad they left in the edit, and it's like, it's just such something funny that you can catch every time in that premiere of Blood versus Water.
Like, everything else he did was icky, though it's hard to talk about. If you are a sadistic person, I guess, like, you could find humor in it because it's like the darkest of humor, but like, we get moments where he is clearly not just out of touch with his tribe and the way he's being betrayed and stuff, but like, he's clearly also out of touch with reality in general. I wanted to bring this up because this is probably the biggest example of a villain moment from Colton, and then I'll let you give your opinion. During the tribal that they give up immunity to vote out Bill.
Yeah.
And Jeff asks him, have you ever been around a person of color? And Colton's like, yes, my nanny. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like,
housekeeper. Yeah, it's so bad. It's so bad.
Like, are we back in like the 1800s with you, Colton? Like, what the to say that on that and think it's normal?
Yeah, I don't understand. Like, to me, it's just crazy because Colton somehow convinced his entire tribe to be willing to give up immunity to go to tribal. And I get, like, I guess, Bill had thrown Colton's idol in the ocean is probably why, like, they all just agreed at that point, and that didn't make the edit. But, like, also, I think, most of them are idiots. So, like, I think regardless, but I don't know. And just, like, then he's able to, like, mastermind Monica Culpepper vote at the swap. And then, he obviously fakes appendicitis. So, like, I don't know. It's Colton's first game is just wild, the things he says and somehow gets away with doing in those couple votes. And then obviously Blood versus Water, he gets brought back with Caleb, and Caleb is this nice, sweet guy, and Colton is like still just like awful, and then quits the game because things aren't going his way again. So
right, and it's kind of ironic because the next time we see a poor sport is in his second season, and it's the second runner-up, Jervis, who gets sports edit and his is different from the others. The others we get negative content. Jervis mostly gets positive content, but then we see him at these challenges and the way that he chooses to celebrate and rub things in people's faces and be like, it's like the opposite of like a sore loser. It's like a overzealous winner type of energy where he's just like, in your face.
Don't let that fool you.
Yeah. But so, like, it's kind of interesting because out of all of them, he's probably the one that gets the most dynamic edit where we see good, bad, but I still feel like I have to put him in the villain because he was aligned with Tyson and they clearly were dominating the game together. But it's funny because Tyson ends up being more of like a mastermind, and Jervis ends up getting the edit of like a poor sport who like rubbed it in everybody's faces and like burned his jury chances through it.
Right. So, this isn't Big Brother, it's Survivor. I'm going to teach you how to play the game, Hayden Moss, even though you won a game like this, but it doesn't matter.
I'm going to rub it in your face.
Yeah.
We only got, okay, so the next is a trio. I want us to go to Worlds Apart. Will, Dan, and Rodney.
Yeah, that trio, oh man. Yeah, obviously all of them have very ugly moments. Rodney obviously throws tantrums and cries about washing dishes on his birthday. Then you have Dan Foley, who, he's an adopted child, so that should absolve him from every...
Also, he understands women, Jake.
You listen, yes, dear.
Listen, me and Dan probably know about the same amount about women. The people who can't tell I'm a homosexual, so yeah, Dan does. So we can just go by Dan's wonderful descriptions of women. Dan's okay. I'll just say it. Dan kind of sucks as a person.
He very much sucks.
And then you get Phil, who literally is purple throughout most of the edit, except for when he literally says one of the most hurtful things to Shireen.
Yeah.
Dead fish at the finale by Shireen.
And he flops on the ramp.
The last person I have in this category is Scott Jason's fellow villain in Scott.
Yeah.
I think if you want to talk about Scott,
So Scott Pollard, obviously the poor sport moment is, of course, dumping water on the fire and everything, and basically taking his ball and going home. Scott Pollard, legitimately, them together are very much a villainous duo, especially. And I think even Scott's final tribal just does come off like a poor sport. And so I think Scott Pollard is a really interesting one, and I think honestly we don't get someone like him and Jason again really after Koran. So
this group of people, I just want to say this group of people, if you all did not notice, we started out having a decent time making poking a little fun at them because they were kind of funny. Leaning towards the end, it was mostly people who got ickier edits. I feel like that's kind of archetype developed. It went from being he just told him to get hit by or eaten by a crocodile. He literally just got pissed off about cookies, or she just told somebody she was going to knock the girl with no legs leg off, kind of goofy stuff that she's an ableist, but then it just worse. Jervis is kind of the exception, but this edit kind of falls into this is why I think we don't see it anymore, because it ruins people's lives, because the audience is also became looking at you audience members who send death threats.
Yeah, please don't do that.
You are the reason we don't get these funny edits anymore.
Right.
Anyway, back to our last one, which is the opposite of a poor sport. These ones are disliked by their people, and these are the pariah villains. The first major one I have listed is Jean Robert.
Yes, Jean Robert. Jean Robert was just interesting. The fact that everybody despised this guy, but they were willing to keep him, Todd and Amanda are willing to keep him around, obviously, because he's so hated by everybody that they can just use him as a meat shield at the merge to get rid of whenever they want. And immediately he's just lazy around camp. He's being creepy towards the women. Jean Robert is absolutely ridiculous. And when he snores at night, it sounds like he's choking a walrus.
I'm hoping I was going to get the walrus piece. This is a pariah that is a pariah because he's kind of just unsettling to be around. Yeah. And that's going to be a common trend amongst these. You all will notice that as we go, this pariah edit actually gets lighter. They start out very harsh with particularly the next person, which is Philip.
Yeah, another person that we've interviewed, Philip Shepard. I mean, I got a Stealth Arrest nickname, so I'm pretty happy. Shane and I both did, but yeah, Philip is really fascinating because he really blows up that first tribal council with not being able to say Francesca's name correctly, and then just ends up being just that annoyance around camp that Boston Rob is going to keep around. And then eventually, obviously, Boston Rob's well, I know I can take this guy to the end because Philip's just going to be Philip. So
I think that the fun part of Philip's edit is that tell me, do you think Philip was in on his edit? Do you think he was playing it up? Or do you think that this is truly Philip?
I think it can be a little bit of both. I think there's definitely aspects of it that are truly Philip. I think he's truly getting annoyed at the smallest things, or making a big deal out of some things. But I also feel like he got in on the joke eventually. I do think Philip eventually realized that he can just deliberately be annoying and get to the end because that's what they wanted from him anyway. But I mean, if he had just owned up to being that in Redemption Island, I mean, maybe he gets more than Ralph's vote. Although I mean, I think Boston Rob was probably just winning against Philip and Natalie no matter what. But like, you know, I think if people theorize that Philip could have just owned that he acted crazier than he actually was. But I think it's a little bit of both. I do think genuinely Philip was also just that guy a little bit.
Right. Okay. Then we get, prior to Philip's second season, we get Abby. Abby Maria, who kind of starts out not a pariah, but then like the longer she lasts, the more she turns people away from her because she's kind of bratty. She's got an explosive temper. She, you know, I mean, but she did do one good thing.
She feuded with Darcy.
No, she hit Michael Scoopin in the head with a coconut.
Oh, yep. That's absolutely a good thing. Called him a moron and an idiot, too.
Yeah, so Abby was onto it before we all were. But as far as her, she was a pariah. Like, people did not want her there. People were annoyed by her. And I think that... but she's the first one who gets a complex edit because when she returns her second time, she's still Abby. But we kind of sometimes get shades of like, it's okay for Abby to be Abby.
Yeah.
From certain.
Yeah. Abby is very, very interesting because we're even seeing like throughout the season of how much people are annoyed or put off by her or just don't like her. Obviously, you have the tense stuff in the middle of the merge where, you know, Artis and Pete are getting voted out and like basically Abby's alone and you have Denise and Scoopin and Lisa basically, you know, speaking honestly about how Abby has acted and how her actions have put her on the outs of the tribe. Yeah.
I do want to make a statement that I think that Abby's the first one where I guarantee you, based just because I do have her on social media and kind of seen some of the ways that she posts stuff, and I think she's genuinely a person who did not realize how she was coming across. Like, hers, I think, came like the other two, John Robert, Philip. I think that they could have been a little bit better on it. Knew that they were kind of annoying and kind of playing up a little bit. Abby for sure did not. She did not. I think her, because hers was genuine. Like her breakdown during that tribal, genuine. Like she did 100%. Not. She was coming across. Then we get three new era players that are going to round up this conversation. The first of which being the pariah to certain players more than others, but I feel like he got enough pariah was Bruce.
Yes, Bruce. Yeah, I definitely like, especially with Katura, and I do genuinely like, I genuinely like Bruce. We had Bruce on as well, and Bruce is great. He just wasn't gelling with that cast with 45 as much. You know, I think he's just a very eccentric guy as well, and his leadership style, I think, just rubs people the wrong way too. So, in that cast,
I want to piggyback real quick off of what you just said. I also think out of this group of people, Bruce is probably the one that got because he was like a returning player, even though he never he had a stigma attached to him that I think snowballed into this edit for him.
Yeah,
not because he's actually a wackier personality, really. It's more he's just like you said, kind of eccentric, kind of harder, firmer with the way he wants to play the game, and I think that it rubbed people the wrong way more. And I think it did also felt like he was getting a second chance. Then we got two more. We get Q.
Yeah, Q definitely is one where, again, Q is very polarizing as a player, and obviously, you know, I think in 46, I think, you know, he is driving a lot of the game and the strategy, and then you obviously have the moment where he tries to quit the game at Tribal Council, and that pisses a lot of the audience off, that pisses a lot of the players off, and really makes him a pariah. And then, you know, he has like the moment in his boot episode with Mike White of 50, where he just basically, you know, he again kind of leans on those tendencies as well, which kind of again puts him on the bottom of everybody.
Yeah, I also would say he is the opposite to Abby, where I think he truly was not understanding that she was going to be getting this edit and she was not in on it. Q 100% knew what he was doing, so we have to be very nice to Q so that Q doesn't want to like cancel us, because
we don't want to be canceled like Christmas. You know, that would be a big mistake.
But yeah, big mistake. Yeah, I love it. But he was entertaining. But pariah villain, people on the island didn't really care for Q. I think he had a little, despite his short run, I think he got a little bit of redemption on his return.
I do agree, because I liked Q more on 50 than I did in 46. So
that leaves us with our last pariah villain, which is another one of the only girls to get it, which is Venus. Where people talking about how much they don't like Venus, they don't trust Venus, they think Venus is fake. Pretty much throughout it's certain players more than others, but we pretty much get the gist that most of these people do not want to play with her. They don't trust her, and they don't necessarily want her around.
Yeah. Venus, like she annoyed me as well. I mean, there's people that absolutely love Venus, but I also think that's the section of the internet that just loves anybody for being an attractive woman. So I can absolutely see why everybody just seemed to not like Venus out there. I feel like it was her attitude, and I do think she made herself a pariah. This has been great, Devin. So we got to talk about what makes a good villain, and I think we've kind of come to the conclusion that all of these things can make a great villain. I guess if I had to pick like an archetype or one that I favor, I mean, I definitely think the flip-floppers, the strategists are kind of the people that I lean more towards as villains that I enjoy watching. What about you?
Obviously I enjoy the strategists, but I have a soft spot for the crazies, like the sports and the pariahs and the people who, don't necessarily get their. But in all seriousness, I do enjoy pretty much anything that makes the show more entertaining and fun to watch and brings in viewers. I'm for.
Yeah.
The only time I really don't enjoy a villain is whenever it starts getting like
ugly.
Colton.
Yeah, Colton. Yeah.
We don't want icky. Like I'm not saying they can't say some off-kiltered stuff every once in a while, because like in the right context it can be kind of funny. Like I said, like the Nyanka telling us that she wanted to knock Kelly Bruno's like fake leg off, to me that's a little dark, but also like coming from Nyanka, who's kind of a joke villain, is kind of funny. But like when we start crossing the line of like into straight up like racist and sex, and it starts getting gross, like Dan's, and we didn't bring, but those type, we don't want that. Like we want, it needs to be fun, it needs to be lighthearted.
100%.
Also, like I do think context matters. I think whenever they get their just desserts, I'm thinking they get their just desserts, it's fine. But if they say something and then get rewarded, it's a little harder to like them. So I would say I'm pro villain. I mean, I have to be, because I got labeled a villain myself. So it makes a good villain, entertaining TV. It makes
I may go by Jake the Snake, but I am definitely not a villain. But next week for what makes, I think we're going to go in what makes a hero, and maybe that's something maybe identify more as a hero than a villain. But we will talk about the different heroes in Survivor history with what makes. Thank you, Devin, for bringing this idea. I think this has been a great discussion. So
this was fun. Obviously, like we'll be back next week, and I just want to say that like Jake here has Jake the Snake as his mantra, even though the snake is usually a villain and he's a hero. I am Devin, sent from heaven. I am the hero. I promise, not the villain, despite what my castmates and production may say about me.
We'll end it there. With that, we will see you all next time on the Tribe of Nerds.